Hi everybody, it's Lindsay Moffat, your instructor, checking in. I'm trying out a new thing where I make little videos or little audio clips to go with our weeks. It is Friday evening and I am very late with this one. This week got away with me, but I have been reading through all of your postings over the last couple days, and I just wanted to sort of check in and let you guys know what I'm thinking so far, and I'm really enjoying the kinds of things that I'm seeing online. Okay, so I just want to tell you a little bit about the design of the course, thinking about it generally, but then also thinking about what's going on in terms of the last week and what's coming up. So one of the features of the course is that there is a place called Neat Things to Share, which is right up here. Neat Things to Share, which is a place where you can put whatever you like that you may want to share with your colleagues. I think of this as one of the ways that we can try to build community online, and I know that that can be difficult at times. So honestly, if there's anything that you think is kind of neat, you come across a neat little recipe or a YouTube video or something that you think your colleagues might enjoy, please feel free to post it there. In terms of design, I've also created a place at the top of the course where we can keep all kinds of administrative things, the welcome note, the course outline, the rubrics, that kind of thing. And I will be uploading some more exemplars into that section as we go. When I was creating the course over the Christmas holidays, one of the things that I was concerned about was the idea that if we are teachers and we are working with our own students, that we might run into some ethical questions around whether or not we can use them in our own research. And generally the rule of thumb has been that you shouldn't be asking your students to participate in your own research because it benefits you and they may not feel that they actually have the power to say no. So we have often discouraged people from using their own students in their inquiry projects. However, one of the things that a colleague of mine did to try and alleviate some of this was to create a departmental ethics review form. And this is something that could be used. You can open it up and you can take a little look-see at it. If you are putting through a project that you feel you want to make sure that you've got another pair of eyes thinking about ethics on it. I have, since the time that I was designing the course and putting it up online, had some correspondence with people who oversee ethics in Ottawa, and they have suggested that if this is something that we are doing just for our course, that it would not be actually considered research, it would be considered something more along the lines of program evaluation. So in fact, a departmental ethics form may not be needed for our projects, for our course. One of the things that's, I guess, an important caveat is that anything that we do in our course should really be kept to our course and should not be then later used as research in a report at a conference or published in any journal. So that's one of the things that we sort of, how we define what would be considered research and what would be considered program evaluation or something other than research. So that's one of the things you might want to be thinking about as you put together your inquiry project proposal. So one of the things that I note is that it looks like we have about 7 people who are in option B, who they'll be putting in inquiry proposals, and about 20 people who are in option A, who are going to be following more along the lines of the articles that we read and perhaps writing a more traditional paper at the end. So one of the other things that people often are curious about with online courses, with each new instructor, is how serious are we about things like word limits and what are we really looking for in those postings. And I would say that in looking over this week's postings, I did note that a lot of people seem to be going far over the 150 to 200 word suggested limit. I know sometimes it can be really difficult to edit ourselves down, and I definitely, in the early days of the course, I am not that worried about it. But I would say that one of the things that I really value is students actually reading each other's posts and interacting with each other. So I find that if people start going over that 200 word limit, that their colleagues start to tune out. So I would really recommend trying to keep it to that 200 word limit. And I know that often means having to edit your work, but I really do think that that's actually part of the process. So if you can do that, that would be really great. And I would also note that having some white space is really important when we are trying to read online. So when I was looking through some of the readings, or some of the postings rather, I did notice that, for instance, in the first postings, in the Everian postings, Ben did a really neat thing in terms of giving some headings, some bold headings that made it really easy to read, and I would encourage that. I think that's kind of a nice format. I don't mean everybody needs to do that, but it's kind of nice to look at. You might want to take a check at that. And then I would also note that in option A, when Samantha and Patrick were responding, they did a really nice thing with white space. And so you might just want to take a peek at what they did to just give a sense of, oh, okay, so in terms of format, it just makes it much easier for your colleagues and for me as well to be able to read online. So one of the things that I loved when I was looking through all of your work was that people were asking some really interesting questions, and I love those. One of the things I thought was particularly interesting, I think this was probably in the Everyone section, that Lloyd had a question about students' comprehension and how when some school boards are using Fountas and Pinnell, who, interestingly enough, I had a professional learning week with Fountas, Irene Fountas, this summer. And in fact, one of your colleagues, Kelly Graham, who's in our course, was there with me, so I got to meet her in person in a different context. It made me think about a resource that I'm going to flash on the next slide called Beyond Misguided Reading. And I only mention this right now because guided reading is such a hot topic, continues to be such a hot topic in so many different boards across the country. And Lloyd's question about Fountas and Pinnell really reminded me that the ideas of how we teach students to read and what is quality literacy instruction continue to be an issue across the country. So you might want to check out Beyond Misguided Reading. I will flash the cover of that book in the next slide. So in terms of thinking about some of the other postings that also you were doing within this first week here, one of the things I would note is that in option A, I had you doing some contrasting and comparing. And I did that in part because I want you to be thinking ahead to eventually you may want to write a literature review as your final paper for me. And that's a lot of what we do when we do a literature review, is we contrast and compare different studies in terms of their methods, in terms of their research questions, in terms of their style, all kinds of different things that we're doing when we're trying to review research that's happening. In terms of option B, as I say, we've got about 7 people who are doing option B, which is great. So folks have started to sketch out some of the problems that they might actually work on as part of their inquiry project, and I find them super interesting, the ones that I read. And in fact, I would encourage people in option A just to read some of the option B problems, and you might decide that you want to watch how that unfolds, because that's one of the things that's going to happen throughout our course, is that option B is going to continue to work on that problem throughout the rest of the course. So looking forward to next week. We've had a first taste of action research, and now we're going to be starting to look at participatory action research, which is a slight variation, which I think you'll find interesting. And I'm trying to build in some choice. One of the things that I've learned a lot about motivating students, whether they be elementary students or graduate students, is choice is a huge motivator. So I've tried to find a range of recent research that you will find potentially interesting and give you some options in terms of choosing what you want to read. Yeah, for option B, we get you to start looking at the literature review in other people's research, so that you can start to think about what a literature review might sound like for your own research. and you start to build your own by digging in what's out there. It doesn't look like we've got anybody doing option C, but that's totally fine. It's different every time I run this course. So I think I'm going to stop there, but I am really looking forward to your work next week, and I really thank you for all of your efforts so far. I'll see you next week. Oh, right, this was the book that I wanted to show you called Preventing Misguided Reading, New Strategies for Guided Reading Teachers, which I thought might be of use to many of you. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.